Hi, everybody. We are updating you about sheep. So for everybody out that's on the Explorer cams, I know there's always about 1 million questions about the sheep and the goats and everybody that lives in the sheep barn. It's like a big soap opera drama going on with everybody. And we're also going to focus on some updates. So you can see, this is our feeder. And inside our feeder, we have Ryman of Ryman and Taylor. Taylor's on the other side. And then Hope, who tends to kick at least one or both of them out of the feeder. Hello, Hope. And so everybody, this is their hay that they eat all winter long. So everybody's in the process of eating. And those who can fit in or jump in like to come inside the feeder to eat. So it's really awesome. So remember the 2 goats that were rescued from the subway system in New York City are Ryman and Taylor, and that is them. And one of them is going to try to sneak in, Taylor. So Taylor is the one with the black head, and the brown-headed one, of course, is Ryman. And they're really, really awesome. They are fitting in here excellently. But, of course, there's always, and I think that's part of the concerns are always like they're going to get hurt or something happens. The goats are naturally quite rough on each other and on others. And a lot of it is just dominance, but it's not. They really don't go too far. Most of the goats in this herd don't have horns. So Hope has a tendency to try to put these boys in their place, which I'm sure she's going to do in front of everybody in a few minutes. But it's because they've taken over her favorite eating spot, which is always inside the feeder. Often for 8 to 10 hours at a time, she stays inside the feeder. So if you guys ever have questions, this is a really good time, so we're going to open it up to questions in a little bit. But the other thing I wanted to tell you is one of the things that we do at Farm Sanctuary is a sponsor of the animal program. We call it Adopt a Farm Animal. But we have a sponsorship that's running through Christmas, and 2 of the animals, they're a pair that you can sponsor for a Christmas gift, which makes, by the way, an amazing Christmas gift since it's really hard to find Christmas gifts, which I've been trying to do. Makes a great holiday gift to have a sponsorship, because it's giving these animals, the food and the health care and all of the stuff that they need to be treated like the individuals that they are. And so everyone here at Farm Sanctuary, including the well over 100 animals that live in this barn all by themselves, all receive individualized care. They have very individualized needs because they're like everyone, an individual has individual needs. So by using the sponsorship program or having the sponsorship program, it really does make a great holiday gift for people. And I love it because you can have a picture of the animals up, and it's a great way to talk about them.
We had some questions in the past moving forward from
yes.
This topic. Is that how you were talking about how the goats can be able on the rough side? Some people get concerned about some of the smaller sheep, and I wonder why the sheep and the goats live together in this barn.
Okay, so the sheep and the goats in this barn, there's lots of reasons that they live together. All of our sheep have been or have active caseous lymphadenitis, which is a condition that a lot of sheep, when you're doing rescue, come in with. And the blood work is not always a good, accurate test. We've had a lot of testing, just recently actually, of sheep that come in where we test the blood and they come back as a negative, but they also come with an abscess, and if you test the abscess and the pus in the abscess, they're actually positive for the condition. It's very, very contagious when the abscess is open, but we actually have had a vaccine made with the pus from some of those animals that have come in. So everybody here is vaccinated, so we very rarely see the abscesses. So, but everybody in here has them, including the goats that are in here. The other reason these specific goats are in here is because they're all really gentle with the sheep. The problem is Roger, who will be rearing his head someday, but Roger has, that's his sister Jennifer, but Roger came in as a baby and he's grown up, so he's a lot rougher than he used to be, but there is nowhere to separate the entire goat herd right now. We have plans for them to go someplace else in the summer, but there's 2 reasons why that may not happen. Goats are very, very good to have with the sheep for a couple reasons. If a coyote were to be brave enough to come down here, the goats have absolutely zero problem hooking them with those horns. So it's really nice for them to have the goats for a lot of reasons, especially to protect them. But the other thing is the goats in most cases are really, really sweet with the sheep. Roger, hi Joey. Roger every once in a while just is trying to show that he's the boss, and he puts people in a place. So we just took in a new group of sheep, which I think everybody knows. It's all those little teeny tiny sheep. It's Lorelei and Rory Marie and Paris and Lane. They're the ones we just won the court case for, and they're very, very shy and very, very tiny. So Lorelei, since she's blind in one eye, often seems to be distressed, but most, like, we see her all the time, like I can see her right now. Most of the time there isn't a problem, but every once in a while she does get picked on. So we are paying attention. Today they were checking everybody's weight to make sure that no one's losing weight. So she's definitely getting in and having lots of stuff to eat. And I think it's hard. When you're here, things look very, very different than they do on camera. Because even when I'm watching the camera, I have a tendency to think that things are happening that aren't happening. Hi, Louise. And so you just do know that we are paying very close attention to all the needs of everybody, and that includes these 4. And we haven't really made a firm decision about where they're going to live, but sheep, that was actually Lorelei right now. So with the sheep, the safety is in numbers, so it is actually better for them, and I think they actually do feel safer in a larger group. You guys didn't see them on camera when they were down in the other barn, and they were actually really, really frightened down there. They were very easily spooked, and it was because they weren't in a large herd. So to see them in both places, they look a lot more comfortable here. So that is why, like, sometimes we lock them up if we think they're getting picked on, but most of the time they will be staying in this flock until we figure out if this is the perfect fit. They have made friends. Joel the sheep, who is one of the top males actually, is really good friends with them, but they have lots and lots of friends. And the thing that's so funny is Lane and Paris have so blended in with the group that when I came in here the other day, I couldn't figure out who they were because we have so many white Katahdins, and that's what they are. They're white Katahdins, so I was like, who are those tiny white Katahdins? Because they've actually gained so much weight. So they look really good. Hello, William. So they look really good, and they're super, super happy, and everybody's doing really well. So we're very happy.
What's the easiest way to tell those 2 apart since they look so similar?
Oh, one of them has a cut in the ear. When we I'll show you how to tell them apart. And they also should have bands on, but if they don't, I'll show you the difference between one. Hold on, I'm going to ask a question. Amy, did we take the ear tag out of Lane's ear? Is it Lane that had the ear tag?
I think it was Paris that had the ear tag.
Okay, so Paris still has an ear tag in because we haven't taken it out yet. And it will be taken out at sheep checks. So if you see one of the 2 white girls with the ear tag, that is Paris, as in France. Right? Paris as in France. So again, if you guys are interested, sponsoring those Subway sheep is a one-time donation that we're actually doing now for Christmas, and it's a really cool gift. I actually have gotten, I personally, who is around these animals all the time, have gotten the gift of a sponsorship of an animal, which is really, really awesome. So we're very excited about that. Hello. Oh, and the other questions, I don't want to space out on the questions that I've been asked. A lot of people were asking about Hippo. That's one of our elderly, hi buddy, one of our elderly goats, and we did just lose Hippo. He and his brothers, so there were 4 of them total. It was Frosty, the dude, Hippo, and Pinto. Pinto is now the only one left. But they arrived at Farm Sanctuary when they were age 15. Their human died, so they were actually left and no one knew what to do with them, so someone called us and we said we would take them. So when we took them in, they were already geriatric, so they had a lot of health problems. So Frosty, the first one, had a giant tumor in his chest, just like how Sky had a tumor in his chest. So when he first came, we did try to get that treated, and it was not treatable. So he had to be euthanized. The dude actually just was a very, like, I think he had kidney disease and his kidneys shut down. And the same thing was happening with, I can't do both because I'm getting distracted with Hippo. So we did end up losing Hippo. We didn't want to take Hippo to Cornell because Hippo is very frightened, really, really scared to be away from Pinto, but also he's just not a friendly goat. So with any of the goats, hi Joel, with any of the sheep and the goats or any of the animals that are, have a high flight response, we really take into consideration their quality of life. When there's a quality of life issue, what would be better for them as an individual? Because a lot of times the fright and the fear and the transport and the stress from all of that actually just makes things much worse. So we had our vet come out and she agreed that he was definitely shutting down. He was unable to stand at the end, and I think everyone had seen him on camera. He did go down. He actually fell, and he was just unable to stand up on his own. And when we got him up, he had a hard time even standing. So he couldn't walk. So that is why we made the decision with Hippo. And then there is one more that we were going to talk about because he did move up to the other barn. And I know everybody's been very attached to Sky. So Sky the goat, we definitely have been really, really struggling to keep any weight on him because he also has cancer. So he had cancer in the chest. That seems to be an area where we do see a lot of cancers, especially with the goats. They get large like thymomas in the chest, and those cancers spread not super rapidly. So they usually have years of dealing with the mass once we find the mass. But because of the location, there's so many, like the carotid arteries there and the jugulars there, it's not operable. And so we can't operate on it, so it's quality of life. And again, with cancer, the tendency is to get very, very thin. So Sky just last week was very, very sick, and we took him into Cornell, and what we found was the mass had gotten so big it was starting to press on his trachea. We were afraid that he had pneumonia, but it ended up being that the mass was starting to press on the trachea. So we ended up having to let him go as well. One of our staff members went up to be with him, so he wasn't by himself. Because we were thinking that we were going to bring him home. And so, unfortunately, winter is a time when we do experience loss with animals who are elderly, animals who have cancer, animals who have been sick for long periods of time. The winter kind of like knocks them down a little bit, even when we bring them inside. It's just like, for whatever reason, they start to kind of go downhill. And I think it's because they're not outside in the fresh air, and they're not having the sun on them and getting to eat grass and all the things, that they have in the summer that they don't have, obviously, in the winter here. William is very distracting, by the way. So if I act distracted, it's because William, my boy, is trying to get my attention. So anyway, those are the updates for this. Those are the updates for this barn. Cynthia is my hairdresser. If you have not noticed, she likes to dress my hair when I'm in here. Do you like to help me? So anyway, if anybody else has questions, because I know there's lots and lots and lots of questions with the sheep, go ahead.
Would you like to talk to us more about how we have so many elderly animals here?
Of course.
What we do for people who do get concerned when they see animals who are very sick, how a lot of it is very similar to hospice care?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So the question is about hospice care and the elderly animals that are here, and when you see an animal, and there's some seriously old animals right in front of me right now. So at Farm Sanctuary, a lot of these animals come in, and especially in this barn. This is probably the best barn to actually talk about it. But a lot of the animals that come in here come in with pre-existing conditions, because we don't go and pick out animals from the shelter. They pick us. So there'll be a big emergency rescue, and we'll go in and we'll take in animals. And in most of the cases, these animals already have pre-existing conditions. So we can't place the ones with pre-existing conditions. We don't place animals that have disease that's going to shorten their lifespan, but also, unless it's somebody that we've worked with a lot, there's a few shelters and sanctuaries that we would definitely allow that to happen. And we actually have a few private adopters who can handle animals that have really, really special needs. But otherwise, we do not adopt out animals that have super special needs, especially if it's a disease. A lot of our adopters already have animals, so we can't give them animals that have caseous lymphadenitis or caprine arthritic encephalitis. So there's all these different diseases that we try not to place the animals in homes. So where else will they go but here? So they will be here. And the thing that's crazy about both of those diseases is a lot of the animals in this barn have them, but they still live into their teens. So we've done so many different things to try to keep those conditions from spreading or actually becoming worse, and the vaccination was actually one of those things. So a lot of the animals in here, there's mothers and babies. If you turn around right behind you, the girl that's laying down, and you can see she's much, much thinner. That's Bonnie. She's a triplet. Both of her sisters are here as well, and all of them will be turning 15 this year. So these are animals that were here since the day they were born. They were actually born at Cornell because their mother arrived with a torn cruciate ligament, and she couldn't stand. So she was unable to have the babies here safely, so we took her to Cornell. The 3 babies were born there. We had to bottle feed while she was nursing. We had to hold her up so she could nurse. But that family has been here for just over 15 years. So it's a lot of the family animals that are here. A lot of these animals in every single species have been here for well over a decade. We have geese that have been with us for almost 30 years, which is insanity. And we also have, of course, goats and cows. Some of our cows are in their 20s. So a lot of these animals live here for such a long time that when you see them, it might seem like something crazy is going on. Here's another good example. Against the pole. So that's Dory. And Dory is actually another one that turns 15. She came in at the same time, and she is best friends with Bonnie, Marlene, and Jeannie, who are the triplets. But she has had dental problems for the last, like, probably 7 or 8 years because she had a really strange jaw ever since she was young. So she goes to the dentist constantly, and one of the things that you'll see with her is she's got food hanging out of her mouth all the time because she only has a few teeth. So she's also on a special diet. So right before we came in here, she had been pulled and she was eating this special diet mash because she needs to get high fiber because she's a ruminant, so she can keep ruminating and stay warm and function and live. But to do that, she has to have something that she can chew because she can't chew the hay. And she'll still chew the hay, but it takes a lot more time for her to get the nutrients that she needs, so she stays relatively thin. But she is on a very special diet. Lucky Lady is still in here. Lucky Lady has cancer. It is not operable, but to take her out of this flock would be really distressful for her, and I think she'd get really sick and die quickly. Right now, her quality of life is great. The biggest issue she has, again, is like keeping weight on, but she's like active and happy. And so you just have to remember that within this barn, the youngest animal is like a year old, and the oldest animal is 17. So we have such a range just in this barn. So animals that are pulled to specific herds, so we have special needs herds for every species. Those animals are animals who can no longer function in the group. So it's not just based on age. It's based on age. It's based on some that come in with conditions where they can't walk. A lot of the sheep and goats that get the CAE, which is the caprine arthritic encephalitis, have issues with their legs, so they're more prone to go into the other things, like other herds, like the special needs herds, where they don't have to walk the long distances to go to pasture, and they don't have as much competition.
A couple questions coming in.
I'm ready.
I would like to know how many animals we have in this barn.
In this barn, we have 127 animals. So we do. So we have different groups. We have a group of elderly goats, and Percy, by the way, of our elderly goats. So in that back pen, and I think a lot of people like tune in on them. They're the ones wearing all the coats because they get cold. All of those guys are 15, almost 16 this year. That's Sir Galahad and Racecar. They're the ones in the dark blue coats. Anastasia does not wear a coat. She, for whatever reason, is the same age as them. She's aged well. She doesn't have the same health issues as them. So one of the things is we can keep weight on her just by feeding her hay, whereas the other guys all have had to have dentals. And then Percy was actually just taken to Cornell because Percy is in AFib. His heart is bad. So he is undergoing treatment for that. Hello, old guy. So all the old people are coming up to be like, and I'm old too. And then in the other pen, we have other special needs goats. So we have Bam Bam, who is the boy that has the braces on his front legs. He's awesome. His best friend is in there with him, Charlie T. That's where Pinto lives. So that group is also very special needs. They don't function in herds with a lot of other goats because they just can't keep up, and it's very, very hard. And then goats are tough with each other. Goats can really pick on each other. So we do try to watch that they don't constantly pick. And then the last group is what I like to call the bad boy herd, and that's all my crazy butters, and they're way over in the back corner. And all of these animals have pasture areas, so if you are watching the Explore cams, there are outside cams that capture them when they're outside as well. But that's Nate's group, so it's Nate, Jake, Peanut, and Leroy. And Nate is notorious for being a bit of a bully. So he only can live with goats who are a lot stronger and more aggressive. But it's funny because his best friend was the head of the herd when he came in. And as his friend aged, he took over, but he didn't kick him out. He loves Leroy, who is really, really old and much, much weaker than him now. But he's very protective of Leroy. So it ends up being a great thing. This is Colvin, by the way. Hello, Colvin. You are very, very itchy.
Nicole wanted to know if it's possible to treat ruminants with CBD or hemp oil.
The problem with CBD and hemp oil with ruminants would probably be how they ruminate. We have not tried it on them. We have tried it with pigs. Pigs are built much more like us. I don't know how it would work, and we've not been in a situation where we've even attempted to do it. It might be something we do. The problem with ruminants is a lot of the stuff that you do has to be injectable because everything breaks down in the rumen. So like, for instance, their pain meds can be oral, but there is no such thing as a med to prevent ulcers or treat ulcers for them that is an oral medication because it breaks down in the rumen. So you actually have to use an injectable. So I'm not sure, I don't know enough about that product to just assume that it would work on a ruminant. I guess it could be tried. I would actually do a little more research though before just trying it, and that would be talking to doctors that we work with, especially the doctors we work with the most with our ruminants, which are our large animal vets that actually come to the farm.
Patricia would like to know how Luke the donkey is doing.
Luke the donkey is awesome. So Luke, okay, so this is what's happening with Luke. So we had this like fantasy that Luke would get neutered and all things would change, because when you neuter like the cattle, especially like if you neuter one of the big bulls that come in, they're pretty calm within a few weeks. But what I've now learned is donkeys don't just calm down, and occasionally don't calm down for years. So we tried him with our donkeys, and he attempted to murder all of them. So that didn't go so well. So we had to separate them. But the good news is we're working with a really nice group that is actually, that's what they do, is they rescue donkeys, and they are willing to take him in. And they're very, very happy to have him, and he will live only with boys, and boys closer to his age, because our donkeys are also all over 25 years old now, so they were not impressed with the young male that tried to join the herd and beat them up. Oh, we were just talking about you, Jennifer and Roger. Hi.
We had a question asking, when we spay and neuter the animals, does it hurt them?
Well, I mean, it's no different than anything else. So no, it doesn't hurt them because we do everything under anesthesia. So they're asleep. So they don't know what's even happening, which is awesome. So no, it does not hurt them. And we're also good about medicating after. So anybody that has surgery is going to have a pain management schedule after they have that surgery, because there's lots of different surgical procedures. I want you to check these two out, though. These are the brother and sister that we rescued from Hudson Valley years ago. You were the cutest. Is Roger and Jennifer. And if you watch Explore, you can watch who is partnered up with each other, because these two sleep together every night, just like they did in the womb. So they're twins. And then Bruce, who's right in front of me, snuggles up every night with his mother, Cynthia. So these animals have these really strong relationships in here, which again is another reason why, because these two are best friends. Look at this. Buddy, buddy. So Bruce and Roger kind of grew up together and they're best friends. So I know that a lot of people are like, somebody needs to move Roger. But when you move Roger, that means you move Roger, Bruce, Jennifer, Cynthia, Shannon, Panza, Clarabelle, like everybody moves. Hope, Dana, Scott's going to go crazy because he only thinks he's a goat. So it's not so easy just to move out like one. It really does require, see? I just was talking about what bullies you are. This is what goats do. But it really does require moving a lot of them. So we take everything we do very seriously and base like what are the ramifications of moving all these animals. And what Bruce just did, just an FYI, did not hurt Joey, who has enough wool to pack a punch. And they do that to each other too. So these are animals that use their heads when they're playing, when they're roughhousing, when they're mad, when they're anything they butt. And that's just who they are. So what he was just doing was showing that he was jealous and he knocked somebody out of the way. But we do watch very carefully, and we never do let anything go too far. We have had goats who have accidentally really hurt a sheep. So those goats actually have been moved to other locations. But again, you can't just move one, because it's like the whole point of having sanctuary and individuals and really kind of recognizing who each one of them are is to recognize that they have bonds and friends and they do not want to be separated from them ever. So we're very careful about who goes with who.
Lisa's curious about what's going on with Bruce's horns.
Okay, oh, God, I hate Bruce's horns. So this is what happens when you dehorn a goat. We do not dehorn goats. Goats are very different than any other animal when you're dehorning, and sheep are the same, but very few sheep breeds now have horns. But with goats, everything about their horns, their temperature, they regulate their body temperature with their horns. They use their horns to scratch. They use their horns for fighting. They use their horns for any number of things. But the other thing that's different with the goats is they have a much thinner skull, which you need to be a little less sassy, sir, because we're talking about your horns. So they have a much thinner skull, and the process, and it happened to him, and that's part, might be why he was so sick when we got him. They burn the horn, and they do this when they're awake. There's very few people that are going to take them to Cornell, knock them out, and do the things that they would do surgically. So he was on a farm with like a lot of dead goats. He was on a farm where the person had actually tried to dehorn a lot of the goats. And what this is a scur. So it's like tissue, and it's got nerve endings in it, and it hurts when he breaks it. And when he's budding, because it's fragile, it actually can break. And we're actually trimming this off. We were talking about it right before we got on camera, because it grows, and it goes onto his eyelid. So we have to like actually cut that. And there is a little bit of a blood supply in it, so we can't cut it too far. But the problem is the scurs are what grow back because they didn't do the process correctly. The other thing with goats is when they're doing the burning on that skull, while they're just holding them there, which is absolutely horrific. I can't even explain how horrific that is. When they're doing that, they can actually cause brain damage to the goat because it's a 10,000 degree burner. So it's a lot of heat that's going down into the skull. The other thing is that these horns are part of the sinus cavity. So if he breaks them and he's bleeding, the blood will come out of his nose. He can get an infection. So we do not dehorn the goats, but a lot of them, especially from the cruelty cases, you'll see it in the main goat herd, we have Earl and Ian and Jamie. Kagan has the best horns out of that group, but those three actually had some of the worst debauched dehorning procedures I've ever seen. And I know that a lot of people, I mean, it's crazy because there are laws that say, not laws, but rules with a lot of 4-H groups that they can't show their animals, or FFA kids that can't show their animals unless the goats are dehorned because they see them as being dangerous. But in reality, they're really not. I've never, I mean, they do sometimes hurt each other every once in a while. I've never really been hurt any more by a goat with horns than I have by a sheep who has no horns and slams into you. So it's really sad, but that is what he has on his head. Those are scurs. Those are not real horns. Hello, Marty.
So people are seeing on camera how Taylor especially seems to be coming closer and closer. Do you think these two will start to get around and start liking people?
Yes. So every animal that we have taken in from the live markets, except for Mandy. Mandy was the only one that was friendly, which makes me sad because I think that Mandy was probably somebody's like 4-H or FFA sheep that they were close to that ended up going into the live markets. But the live market animals are usually shipped from long distances. We've had them come in with like ear tags from Texas and Utah and all these different places. I don't know why they're coming from everywhere. They've been shipped into the city. They're already frightened because the sounds and the smells and everything is so stressful for them. And the other thing about that, besides that stress, is a lot of these animals are coming from farms where they're coming with a whole family. So there'll be a truck with like 100 sheep and goats on it that are all going to one live market. So a lot of times these animals are actually seeing, smelling, and hearing the death of a family member. It is really, really upsetting to them. So they take off. Sometimes they just get loose. If you've ever been around goats that size, they're small and they can jump almost anything when they're scared. Your adrenaline really makes you like crazy tough. But most of the ones that we get from the live market end up being super friendly. So they're trying. So what these guys will do is they will watch and they'll watch and they'll watch and they'll watch and they'll try to see like what, other animals are doing when they're around people. And once they get used to that, I'm guessing that they're going to become really, really friendly. And look, you can see Paris is over here with Kaylee just hanging. Oops, everybody blocked that shot. So Paris is actually... Paris and Lane are actually acting like they've been in this flock forever. I think because there's so many Katahdins, so they're like, oh, we all must be related. Hi, Paris. Aren't you cute and little?
Do you think the two of them are related?
We think they might be sisters. They are all so similar, and they do the same things. Like a lot of the times when we see sibling animals come in, they almost look like they're mirror images where they do kind of the same things at the same time. And they're together most of the time. Although Lane is over with Rory and Lorelei right now by the door chewing some cud. But they are getting much more comfortable. And it's almost like, when you go to a new school, you kind of get picked on for a little while and then all of a sudden you fit in and it's like you've been there the whole time. Hi, Scott. How you doing? This is Scott.
Mentioned earlier on, it's Explore.org actually about Lorelai. She seemed, people were concerned that she seemed a little bit off, that she wasn't like herself.
Well, we checked her today. So what we did was we had the caregivers, because anytime that somebody writes to us, we take it very seriously. So we actually checked them today, and again, we checked them to see if they're losing weight, to see if they're having any other health problems. She's not off at all. She's actually, I can see her with her mom. And she's chewing cud, so her rumen's working and everything's functioning. I mean, I think and I think we all have to go back in time again, when they were in the other barn, she always seemed very off as well, because what they think is wrong with her eye was a traumatic injury, which could have also affected the brain. So she is off in comparison to everybody else. She's just not as alert. So I think that the damage that happened to the eye was actually because she had head trauma. And we're not really sure how that happened, but the guess was Luke, the donkey, who had injured some other animals as well at the site where he came from. Yeah, see, they're in the back corner. She's chewing cud, and the other one is chewing cud. So mom is in the front, that's Rory, and Lorelai's behind her. And Lorelai was like this in the other barn as well. So, like, when I come in here, I'm not seeing anything really different than what I saw when they were in the barn with no other sheep but themselves. And they also at one point lived with the alpacas, and they're actually much more frightened when they were with the alpacas. One of the reasons we wanted to get them up here quickly was because the place where they were the safest was in a pen with alpacas, but they would stay in the corner because they were scared of the alpacas. So it was nice getting to move them up here with other sheep. Yeah, so 3 of them are hanging over there, and they move around. Like I see them in different places, but they do just so you know, every sheep in this barn has a favorite spot. Like Ferdinand sleeps in the back left corner. Like they all have different spots. We had a sheep named Daniel that if you wanted to find him, you'd just be like, oh, he's the sheep behind the gate. They're just like us. They have things that they like and places that they want to hang out and places where they're more comfortable. And that includes spots in the barn that are kind of their spot. So having them be in one place doesn't really necessarily worry us because it's kind of the norm for them.
We've also had some questions about whether it makes sense to put the girls, especially since Rory and Lorelai seem to be more frightened than the others, with a smaller group like Sophie and the triplets.
With Sophie and the triplets, they're not going to always be by themselves. The only reason Sophie and the triplets are by themselves is Sophie's still learning to use her legs, and she's way too small. Like compared to those 4, Sophie weighs like less than half of what any of them weigh, and she has bad legs. And the babies are babies. I would never put babies out in this weather right now. They're just way, way, way too young. They're only a few weeks old. So we make those decisions because you also have to remember that Rory and all of those girls are all over a year old. They're like closer to like 3, I think, at this point. So they're older sheep. So even though they're small, they're not babies. And we had them in a pen with a nice big yard where when they were outside, they were super happy. But every time they were inside, they were really, really nervous because these are animals who had never been handled. So they kind of respond almost like they're wild, especially when there's people around or when they feel threatened in any way. So we could put them with the elderly sheep, and that will be an option if something happens that we really start to get concerned. I know a lot of people are concerned that watch just because they're so small, but I'm telling you, every sheep that's moved into this herd, with the exception of the Orland sheep, because a lot of them were bigger than our sheep, but most of the sheep that move in when they're smaller just kind of have to find their way, just like with any group. And if we like separate, they actually don't feel as safe. Like they're chewing their cud and they're standing against the wall. They're very comfortable right now. So they don't look any less comfortable than, they actually look a lot less, frightened than Ryman and Taylor. So even Ryman and Taylor right now are just trying to figure out their place in the herd, because you have to remember that sheep and goats are herd and flock animals. So they really have to kind of find where they fit in that group. So anyway, to wrap everything up, unless there's more questions, we were just trying to do an update in here because I know that we get a lot of questions on the Explore cams and a lot of concerns. And if you do watch these cams, they are kind of like a sheep soap opera, which I think is absolutely hysterical. And the goats are like playing the role of the villain. But it was also to give you an update on Taylor and Ryman. Taylor's sneaking up behind us, actually. He's really close. And if you look at them, they always have this like frightened look on their face. That will go away. But they're new enough now that like when they hear human voices and they're around people, they're definitely still very nervous. And again, you can also do a one-time sponsorship of them for Christmas. Makes it amazing Christmas gift for lots of reasons, not just because it's the cutest thing you can possibly get in the mail, but because it also raises awareness of these animals and their stories. So it tells their story. You can put them up like the picture. It's so much fun to have pictures of the animals up in your office, or you bring them to dinner, or you have them in your home, and people ask about them. And it's a really good way to start a conversation about who they are and where they came from. A lot of people still don't realize that there are live slaughter facilities in the middle of New York City. Like, they're all over the place, and people don't even know they're there. So that story is really spectacular. It like allows people to see, you know, how these animals are seen and treated just in general, no matter where they're from. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. We're having a lot of fun in here because, yeah, oh, sorry, I thought we had another question. We're having a lot of fun in here because these sheep are really awesome. And they love this weather, by the way. They don't get, you can tell they don't get super cold. Hi, Joey. And the California sheep are the best because they're getting really thick wool. Look at this face. They're getting really super thick wool. And sheep, they are so happy being in this weather. It's not even funny. I'm not really sure if the California caregivers are feeling exactly the same way. They seem happy too, but I bet they're not as excited about the cold. But the sheep are super excited about the cold. Hello, Francis. Hello, Francis. Yeah, so look around, have fun looking around the sheep barn, and please tune into the Explore Cams. They're really, really a great way to get to know these animals as individuals and see like how they interact with each other. They're just like people. They have lots of different interactions. Yes, they do. And they really, really, really are all individual and amazing with all different personalities. And it's a great way to get to see that watching them in this barn. And thank you for tuning into the live feed. And next week, we're going to be with cows because we haven't been with cows forever. So we're going to do a little cow barn. Actually, no, we're not. I lied. I'm a liar. Next week, I'm going to be in California. And it's not because I don't love snow, because I love snow. Oh, my God, I love snow in winter. But I am going to be in California next week. So the live feed is going to be from California, and you'll get a little update on some of the animals that moved from Orland to our Acton facility, which includes some of our really cute donkeys. So tune in for that. You'll get to see all the folks that work out there. It's a lot of fun going out to Acton. I love scratching them because you remember they don't have fingers. Somebody's got to do it. So we'll be in Acton next week for the live feed, and then after that, we're going to come here and we'll be with the cows. And it'll be really, really cool. I'm very excited about it. So tune in, have lots of questions ready. If you have cow questions, if you have Acton questions, you ask them, we will answer those questions, right? Bye. Come on. Hi, Mason. Hey, buddy. Look at this face. No, I can't. I don't have enough hands. I just don't have enough. No, it's just not enough. We need more hands. This is a barn that requires people to have octopus-like extremities. There's just too many to fetch for those. This is Vera Jo. This is a cameo performance. She doesn't usually come in. Hi, Vera.
She doesn't like to come out. Maybe. Let me put